Do we have a microphone for you? I hope. There we go. Hi, welcome back.
Hi, Ken.
So, we have a new book,
We do.
Icons of Rock. And, you know, again, it's something, there's a theme that's happening today that wasn't planned. So I talked with Mal Evans' daughter, Julie, and then Frida Kelly. And there's so many books written about the Beatles, about the late 60s, about what it is. The magic of what this is to me, for all of us, is someone from the inside, is someone who is in it, as opposed to reading about it and writing it. I bet you wouldn't trade your time and experience for anything in the world.
No. No, because that's part of who I am.
So, I mean, you look so elegant, you look gorgeous. And
Thank you.
I'm being not just empty flattery, but you and Patty, your sister Patty Boyd, were part of that scene, Swingin' London. That was the look. And I think about in the movie Hard Day's Night, when George Harrison wanders into the office and they're trying to plan what the next look is, and we don't like this girl. Was there pressure? There must have been insane pressure, because it wasn't just music. It was music, it was fashion, it was art, and you were as much a part of it as the music. Was there a lot of pressure in the fashion industry about trying to, what's the next hot thing? What's the next look, like the movie?
Not at all.
Really?
Not at all. No. I mean, I worked with these two fashion designers, and they were the first ones to do pantsuits, and everything they made for me. And so there was no pressure. It was just a fun time. And as I said yesterday, it was like the music world and the fashion world all kind of mixed together. Yeah, no pressure at all.
But there was such a collision. Last year, I was talking with your sister about this, and she said, I'm paraphrasing, but they were going to dinner, I think a hotel or a nice restaurant, and she was wearing pants. And they refused to, am I?
No, that was me.
That was you.
That was me, because we all went to, it was called Youthquake. Patty and I were the models for Folan Tuffin, and then these other two very sophisticated models were for Mary Quant. So we went to New York. I was 17. I'd never been to New York before. And everybody went for breakfast, and I felt I was the young one. You know, they'd all learned how to do the catwalk and all this. They were sophisticated. And I was this little 17-year-old, and I had this red pantsuit on that was a Folan Tuffin. And I was refused entry into the restaurant to have breakfast, and told to go upstairs and put on a frock.
What year is this?
1964, 65. And it was the Algonquin, you know, that used to be a very cool place.
Right.
And yeah.
You know, we think of it, when you see movies about those were the mores of the 20s and the 30s. No. You know, we're talking 60 years ago. That's the magic of what all this is. Sorry, it's changing.
Yeah.
Sorry, more and more women are going to come in wearing pantsuits, and you could tell them all to leave, but you're not going to have anybody eating here.
Right.
It was just completely changing, and being on the forefront of it. When you shop for clothes, were you just picking it at random? Was there? I mean, I know you when you're hired to be in a photo shoot, it's design, but in just walking around. Was it organic, or was there a theme, like we want colors, we want paisley, we want this, we want that?
When I was shopping?
Yes.
Well, I didn't really have the money to go shopping. I bought my first pair of, she was called Moya Bowler, which was very, of that time, new fashion designer. And I think I spent about 3 weeks worth of wages just buying one pair of little snakeskin booties to go with my red trouser suit. So, yeah, I didn't have money to go shopping, but I was given all this clothes from them. So,
I mean, you know, for a teenager, and it still happens today, so many young teenage girls are top fashion models. And you're whisked into this world, and as you said, you came to New York, what, you're 17 years old. It must have been overwhelming.
it was. Yeah.
Just like the boys coming here in 64, you know, it's part of, as you said, music, art, fashion. It was a whole new world that was emerging, a new generation that had to be stopped. You know, there was that Hard Day's Night of, the man in this train car with the proper bowler hat and the suit. Now, see here, I pay my taxes,
Right.
and that, it feels like that was always there. That was...
Yeah, and I think there's part of the excitement of it all was the fact that I wasn't so aware things are changing. It was more aware of when you're 17, 18, the world is new to you and exciting, and it's and you knew that you were with in a way that was a subculture, because you're all going to clubs together and you're all dancing and you're listening to Motown music for the first time, and everything was exciting.
It was as a kid here in New York, and I'm saying this, I think I speak for many of us, looking at the album covers, looking at the designs, the hair, it was like these aren't human beings. They're larger than life. From Jimi Hendrix to George to all of them, like, wow, look at this, look at that, look at this. So this book, Icons of Rock.
Mm-hmm. In their own words, it's called.
Tell me about it. Tell me where we go.
Okay, so about 35 years ago, I'd gone to college for the first time. I was probably, about 35-ish. I started doing my PhD and was trying to find a subject to write about. And because I never felt I was creative, I thought, well, I'll write something for people like me who don't feel creative. But also, I'd been in the music world for, many years, and so I started a list of questions. If I had the musicians to talk to, what would I ask them? So I started off with Don Henley, because my second husband was King Crimson Ian Wallace, and he played, when we were living in LA, with Don Henley, Bonnie Raitt, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Dylan, with a lot of musicians. So I had a lot of musicians who I knew to pick from. And I asked them questions about what were they nurtured, was their creativity nurtured when they were younger, or what part did drugs and alcohol play, all these myriad of questions. And it came out in a book called Musicians in Tune, 92. Well, now I've redone that book, but because I was carrying all these audio tapes around with me for years and years and years, frightened somebody might steal them, I ended up destroying these interview tapes. Horrific. Oh. Except for 8. The 8 that I chose, and I don't know why I even chose these 8, that I kept was George and Ringo, Eric Clapton, Don Henley, Graham Nash, Ravi Shankar, Joni Mitchell, and who's the other one? Wonderful drummer, Tony Williams.
Got it.
And so with this book, instead of with the previous book where I'd get little bits out of each interview, depending on what the heading was, this book, I've actually transcribed the whole of the interview. So the Joni Mitchell interview is one that was done 35 years ago that nobody's ever heard before or read. Same with George. There's things that he's talked about that has never been read before. And also, the other thing is I interviewed for new musicians, more recent musicians like Jacob Collier, and asked them questions, and the difference between the music world in 88 to 1890 compared with today. Like, we've got Spotify, we've got social media, it's very different how they write songs. But at the crux of it all, it's still the creative process. They're describing exactly the same thing, which shows it's timeless.
Absolutely. But you were there at a time, you're in the middle of this amazing period where album after album, artist after artist become legacy artists that have lasted the test of time. So I've been playing classic rock, God bless, 40 years, thanks to everyone. My 25th year at Q, 40 years in New York. We're playing the same music.
Yeah.
It's just that 2 new generations, not the next generation, the 4th generation has fallen in love with this music that you were watching it from the beginning.
Well, that's it. And, I don't know how long ago it was, doing going to a Fleetwood Mac concert. I think, can't remember when it was in Wembley, I think the last one. And you look around at the audience and you've got about 4 different generations there.
Yes.
All loving it. And I'm sure that's a lot with the Stones, you know, with all sorts of those bands.
They're not touring this year because everyone over 65 is going to the show. You would not fill stadiums with that. It's, you said, it's people over 65. It's 40 to 60, 20 to 40, 10 to 20. That's what keeps us show. If it was just us of a certain age, over 65, listen to classic rock, we wouldn't be on the air. And I don't say this with braggadocio, I say this with pride in the music. We have the highest ratings age 18 to 34 in the demo. And I didn't get younger or better looking, I assure you of that. It's the music. That's what this means. The music had soul, the music was honest. And man, that you obviously were connected to with George Harrison, who, you know, post-Beatles, what this was, this rocket ship, but everybody kind of went, you know, Paul's here, John's here, and George on that spiritual path. And if you don't mind, I wanted to talk about Rishikesh a little bit, if you don't mind, and the Maharishi.
Yeah.
Everybody seemed to describe a different experience, from Donovan to, what was your experience?
Oh, I could have carried on living there for many years.
Really?
I was so inspired, you know, the Himalayas in the background, which are very, I mean, really awe-inspiring, but also the meditation. But Patty and I and Cynthia used to go on the roof of the bungalow while George and John and Paul were making up songs. And John would come on that rooftop and say, I didn't sleep very well last night. And suddenly you've got that song,
I'm so tired.
I'm so tired. Or, you know, our little bit of the bungalows, we were kind of like in different people, it was like a horseshoe. And we were sort of took over these bungalows. And there was one time where Mia Farrow's sister, Prudence, was having a hard time. She was in this trance. So they brought her over to our lot of bungalows. And I went in there with my flute, trying to make some sort of sound. And then John was in there with his guitar. And there came Dear Prudence. And, you know, Bungalow Bill. It was like everything that they were writing about was what was going on at the ashram of that time. Anything could be made into a song.
That's the thing that amazes me, when the speed of it, where I talk with musicians who they've had one hit and they spend 5 years trying to think of a second song. And it just seems like it flowed through them like an open hydrant of music. You said, oh, we stayed in the Bungalow Bill, every little thing. I mean, John Lennon sees this poster in a shop, you know, being for the benefit of Mr. Kite. How many thousands of people, Jenny, passed that poster and went, that's weird. I want that, and here's this song that will last forever.
Yeah.
How they did it, like it was Donovan who had said to me, when I asked him, was there jealousy amongst everyone for all their songs? He said, it wasn't jealousy. It was, I've got 5 songs that I think people might remember. Eric Clapton has 20. What did they do in a previous life to get hundreds? Did they dab our Savior's wounds? Why does every great idea seem to come to them first? And we're left with whatever they didn't catch.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I'm just thinking some of the things that the musicians say in that book you're talking about shows that ideas for songs often just come from nowhere. And, you know, like one of the things that these musicians had in common was their humility, because they didn't feel often that the songs came from them. They came from, like, they were used as a channel. And some people talked about getting songs in their sleep. And if they didn't wake up and write them down, they'd be forgotten. And then somebody else had said, and then I'd hear it somewhere else, as if, you know, music is all around, and they are sensitive enough to actually channel it down. So, you know, the whole thing to do with music and what inspires people, and you know.
But, for you explaining, I feel like when you tell these stories, you make us feel like we're with you in the bungalow, watching them create magic on the spot. That's the excitement of it, of being inside that eye of the storm, of being in it, how fast, how creative it could all work.
Yeah.
You said you would have stayed there. How old were you when you went to Rishikesh?
I was 19, I think.
Were you hesitant at all about going to India
No,
as a teenager?
it was something I'd always wanted. What happened, we were in Bangor in Wales, and it was when Brian Epstein died. We heard he'd died. We were all getting our mantras, and so we were meant to be there for longer, but obviously they wanted to come home. So I was being driven back with Patty and George, and they'd been told, the Beatles had been told, okay, from Maharishi, that he would like them to come to India and learn how to initiate other people. And it was something that I thought, oh God, I would love to do that. I would love to go to India. I would love to feel something meaningful in my life. And I just thought, oh well. But anyway, we're on our way back in the car, and I get out to London, when they get to London. And George gets out of the car, and he says, would you like to come to India with us? And I remember saying to him, how can I ever thank you? It was like the most incredible thing. And he just said, just be yourself. And I realized many years later, that's all we ever have to do. So it was a real, I was just so excited. And that's when I worked at the Apple boutique while we were waiting for that following February to go to India.
What an amazing story. My God, that's wonderful. Just be yourself. Now, the thing about the Maharishi, John seemed to sour on it and written, some sarcastic things and Sexy Sadie and other things. Again, to quote Donovan, who said to me when I asked him about it, he said, the messenger can be flawed, but the message is pure. Tell me your take personally on the Maharishi.
The Maharishi, just going back to on our way to Bangor when we were going to get initiated, and we were all in the train, in the carriage, went by train, and in our carriage there was Mick and Marianne and the Beatles and Patty and me, and Cynthia missed the train.
That's some train car, by the way, wouldn't you say?
Then Maharishi came we decided we'd go into Maharishi's carriage. So we all traipsed down the train, got into his carriage, and he was sitting here, Patty was here, I was here, and the others were all sort of around him. And he turned to Patty and said, oh, and what do you do? And Patty said, oh, I design clothes. And I thought, that's funny, I didn't know that. But anyway, I'd just come back from San Francisco, and I was feeling a little bit like I'd spent 6 months in San Francisco sort of looking for God. And through smoking weed or, taking trips and everything. Right. So I was a little bit blown away. And then he looked, and I thought, I know what's coming next. And then he looked over at me and said, and what do you do? And I just said, nothing. And he kind of looked away, and I always felt then like, oh, God. But I loved the meditation. So when we got to India, I never really felt that he was somebody I didn't think of him as a guru. He would talk about gold aeroplanes. That's what he'd really like.
Gold airplanes?
Yeah, he wanted a gold aeroplane. And I thought, I had my own sort of, had aha moment, minute beforehand, and it didn't include him. And yet I loved the meditation. So I wasn't a big fan of his, and I felt a bit awful because I'd hear George sort of always going on about Maharishi and how wonderful he was, and quoting him and all this stuff, and I had to kind of shrink and be a little bit quiet about that.
It wasn't the time to tell him he wants a gold airplane. Remember that part,
no, right? And but I love the meditation. Sometimes I do like 2 days, nights running, and there was one time when I was trying to do a long meditation. And in the middle of the night, I woke up with this horrendous fever. And I just kept trying to keep meditating, sitting on the floor, just leaning against my bed. finally I thought, I've got to go and find Maharishi. It was in the middle of the night. And so I made my way sort of along the ashram and found Maharishi. He got woken up. And I said, I don't feel very well. You know, I feel really bad. I'm boiling. And he said, just go back and meditate. So I went back. And the next morning, Patty came, knocked on the door, you know, you're going to come for breakfast. And she took one look at me and said, oh my God, you look terrible. And luckily, because we were out in the boonies, a doctor happened to be there. So the doctor came to see me and he said, you've got tonsillitis. Which I thought was a bit weird because I'd had my tonsils out when I was a kid. Anyway, so I sort of stayed in bed and felt terrible. And then another doctor happened to be around later on that day. And of course, I had dysentery. So I had visitors while I was in bed, and one of the visitors was John and Cynthia. And John had done this drawing for me. And he showed it to me, and it was this drawing of this Indian man with a turban on his head, and he's playing a flute. And he's got a little basket, he's cross-legged, he's got a little basket, and out of the basket comes this snake. And John wrote underneath, by the power that's in and the power that's out, I cast your tonsil lighthouse out. Love, John and Sin. So there were lots of things that happened. You know, we'd go down to the Ganges, a whole bunch of us, we weren't really allowed, and just hang out there. And I loved it. I mean, I just had such a great time, as well as the meditation.
I'm so glad it was a wonderful experience for you.
Yeah.
So you get back to London.
So we get back to London. It was a bit sad when we actually left. George knocked on my door and said, come on, we're going, we're leaving. And I couldn't think why, or why it was so premature. We'd been there a couple of months. And so I quickly got ready, and it was decided Patty, George and I would go to South India and join up with Ravi Shankar on tour. So as we were all leaving to get into the taxis, Maharishi had heard that his prize troupe, you know, was leaving. And so he was sitting there, and he had this man who put the umbrella over his head to protect him from the sun, and we all had to walk past him. And it felt really bad, you know. It felt like, I mean, yeah, I didn't really kind of click with him, but I felt awful for him. And he kept saying, boys, why are you leaving? And John had said the previous night, and he might have repeated it, you should know if you're so fucking cosmic.
That's our scouts, Johnny. That's our Johnny.
So then George, Patty and I flew to Madras, met up with Ravi, who is just, George loved Ravi, and Ravi thought of him as his son. But George by then had got dysentery, and he thought Maharishi had put the sort of
a hexer
on him. But so we had quite a few days with Ravi and going to his concert, and it was just heaven. Really lovely.
God, what an amazing journey for somebody who's young, for you know, a teenager, but into this whirlwind of a life that changed your life in so many ways.
Yeah.
Did you get back to London? Are you still working? Are you still modeling? Are you still in that world?
No, I'd sort of gone off modeling, and so Patty and I opened up this store on the King's Road selling not antique, it was an antique market, but we were selling Art Nouveau and Art Deco, and we had this little kind of, it wasn't even a room, it was like a hut in the antique market, and I would be the one manning the stall, and often we'd go out and find things together, or she'd go out, and so that's what I did.
There was, you know, style musically, style visually, style in clothing. There's a dear friend of mine, a wonderful musician, Warren Haynes, and he played with the Grateful Dead and the Allman Brothers and his own band, Government Mule, and we were talking about the Beatles, and would you want that level of success, of fame? You know, the more famous than anyone has ever been for so long. And he said, you know, when I'll be going off to the studio, and my wife will say to me, aren't you taking pictures today for the album cover? Yeah. And she'll say, remember to bring a clean shirt. Right, thank you. He goes, that's the extent of my work. of what I have to do for the album cover.
Right.
But I think just as I was, the whole world is waiting to see, are they in stripes? Are they polka dots? Is it Sgt. Pepper's? And as soon as everybody's in psychedelic clothing, then they're in black and white. And that the whole world, fashion-wise, all the shops have to see how fast, if George is wearing that scarf, how fast can we make it and get it in? That the pressure of finding it out, and he said that pressure of the order, the sequencing of the songs, or what I'm wearing, he said, I would never want that for myself. No money would be worth it because it would crush me.
Yeah.
It just seemed somehow effortless. They just, let's do this. Oh, let's do that.
Yeah, exactly. And yet you're setting a trend.
But you know, if I just said to you, if I just picked someone here and said, okay, you're the new trendsetter. You have to decide what we're going to wear and what we're going to listen to for the rest of the year. Okay, no, we decided it's you. I would be terrified. There's a stress to it. Whereas it seemed like it just accepted it, and it was how it was.
Well, it was just such an organic change, wasn't it? It wasn't,
it's not calculated. Everything these days is calculated.
Exactly, yeah. Which is hard, and how creative can you be when it's calculated?
Sadly, there's a young songwriter and a dear friend. He's wonderful. His name is Josh Bennis. He's got a band, and he told me, and I listened to his demos and we're helping him. He said there's a program on Google where you can upload your song to it, and it will compare it to all the hit songs that are that are streaming now, and it will tell you on a score of what your probability of success is and what you need to change to make it a hit, and that everyone's using it. And I thought, you couldn't summarize the death of music any more concisely than that.
Yeah.
Your entire life, no one we knew, as you talked about Bungalow Bill, whatever, it never started with what will be a hit.
Yeah, no, it's too contrived. There's no room for creativity.
It's sad, really.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah.
So and I want to leave. I promised I would leave room for questions for you guys. Yes, and that. But when you hear at this point, I mean, it is ubiquitous. You hear a Beatles song. You hear a song, a George song, or something that you know. Does it bring back? Is there memories? Do you connect with it still? Do you hear it and think of those times, or is it just floating?
No, what it does, it just gives me absolute joy.
I'm so glad.
It's like I could just start dancing wherever I am. It's lovely.
I mean, 3 hours of yes. As I said, probably I've never done a radio show in my 40 years, probably where I haven't played a song that was written for your sister in one way or another. But you're in the fulcrum. Here's Eric Clapton. Here's George. My final thought, because I can't get to everything. Tell me about Eric Clapton to you. Who is he to you?
Okay. I think what happened with Eric and me was that we both loved Patty. And I think there was a sort of rivalry that started, especially we'd all had too much to drink, But he could tease me to tears like a horrible older brother, or he could be the sweetest person going. Put his arm around you, very sweet. So, so that's what he was like, but loved his music, and he was very kind. My daughter's here, Lucy, in the audience, and Lucy would come and sit on the side of the stage when we'd go and watch Eric play, and he'd be quite happy for her to just be sitting there as a little tiny kid, listening to him, and he was great. He was really fun as well. When I did the interview in 1989, he had just recently stopped drinking and using, and he was so honest. It's such a great interview, and just showed him for exactly who he is, which is such a great guy and very creative and amazing guitar player, all the things that we know.
Right.
Yeah.
I never just brought this up when you were talking about icons of rock. Any interaction with Jimi Hendrix?
No, I saw Jimi Hendrix playing at Monterey Pop Festival, which was very cool.
I would say.
Yeah, just a bit. Apart from that, not, but obviously loved his music.
God, yeah, I remember, what was the quote when he was playing in the theater in London of Clapton leaving and Pete Townsend coming or something, and he said, don't go down front, it's too wet. What? He said, yeah, all the guitarists are crying, because we all knew we had to up our game after he walked out on stage. All right, I promised I'd leave a few minutes for you guys. Bob, if we have a mic, yeah, you're right here. Yes, we can get you.
I was wondering how you first found Maharishi, because I've learned TM 50 years ago, actually. And, it's changed my life, as the Beatles have. Of course, the Beatles changed it probably a little more. But how did you first find him?
What happened, living in San Francisco. It was 1967 for 6 months. And when I came back, I was staying with Patty and George while I was just kind of, finding out where I was going to live. And just so happened that Maharishi was going to be talking at the Hilton Hotel on Park Lane. So we all went together, and the rest of the Beatles. I don't think Ringo went at that time because Maureen was just about to have a baby. So we went to see him talk, hear him talk. And I think that's when he said he'd like all of us to come to Bangor and get initiated.
How did you know about that happening, that lecture? Did you know about it?
Oh, it was in the newspaper. I think it was in the Times. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Over there, sir. Yes.
Hi.
Hi there.
I'm wondering if you can verify the claim by Mike Love that he sort of kind of co-wrote USSR.
Ooh, that's a first. I haven't heard that one before.
I didn't hear that. I never heard that one.
Yeah, he said he was, California Girls, and then supposedly McCartney took that from him, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't help you because I've never heard of that before.
Well, how about the monkeys having sex why don't we do it in the road?
I don't know that either.
Thank you.
Who's? Yes, sir.
Patty, again, thank you very much for being here. May I ask your expression when you heard George Harrison was going to be your brother-in-law?
Well, I'd already got to know him by then. Excuse me. I think it's more about when I first met him, which my sister had finished. They'd finished filming Hard Day's Night, and she said, do you want to come over to her place and come and meet him? And I expected, because they're so much larger than life at that time, I'm not quite sure what I expected, but when I got there and met him, he was much smaller than I thought, and much slimmer. And he was so friendly and warm sort of person, and made you feel at ease immediately, because he was so normal. And then, he'd come to our house at some point for Sunday lunch, and I remember him showing me chords to a Buddy Holly song. And only when he talked about their tour in America did I think, he's someone, he's one of the Beatles, because he was so normal. You just thought of your girlfriend's, your sister's new boyfriend. So, yeah.
Or as my wife
Thanks.
has fond of telling the story when she was a little girl, and her older sister, who was really her guiding star, took her to see Hard Day's Night, and this little girl is tugging on her sleeve, and her sister said, "What?" And my wife, as a little girl, said, "Do all boys look like that?"
Oh, we wish.
And to which she'll say to this day, she lied to me and said yes.
Oh.
And she got stuck with me, but it worked out okay. But still, I understand, as you said, larger than life.
Right.
Stevie Van Zandt, who's a dear friend, my partner in beetling and crime, and so many, his moment of Hard Day's Night was seeing it in New Jersey, where he grew up, and when they came on running, girls had jumped out of the seats and they were kissing the screen. They had run up on the screen and we're kissing the images. And he said, even as a 12, 13-year-old, I'm going, uh-huh,
Yeah.
uh-huh. I don't know how, but I gotta be on that screen somehow.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Let's grab one more. But yes, over here, sir.
Well, favorite Beatles song? You're such a meanie. That's so hard. Things we said today.
Beautiful. Things we said. Yes, sir. Last question.
Thank you. Any stories or memories of any songwriting conflict with the Beatles in India that you can share with us?
None at all.
No?
No, because they got on so well and they were so funny and their humor and their wit, you know, they just had this thing where they were always connected. So that's how it felt.
It was four people with one heartbeat to me going in. So